Okay, so we are picking up on page 22. Actually, what we're going to do is David's just going to sort of quickly take us back through the giant paragraph on 21 that leads into 22, because where we're picking up in the second paragraph in 22, it starts with why does he behave like this? So we wanted to refresh everybody what that behavior is. So David's going to take us through that real quick, and then we'll pick up on 22 to continue our study of new content. Take it away, my man.
David, I'm a recovered alcoholic, drug addict, guys. Hey, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. So let's go to page 21, like David stated here, and let's go to the first paragraph, because the first full paragraph where it talks about the real alcoholic, because that's going to set up the next paragraph, and I'll talk to you about what I'm going to do with that. So it says, but what about the real alcoholic? Question mark. He may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker. But at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. So we're still talking about the body and the phenomenon of craving, this craving that takes place inside of me, that I need the 22nd one more than I even needed the first. And then that sets up this next paragraph. So with this next paragraph, David and I are both students of Mark Houston. So we like to take statements in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and turn them into into questions. And what we're going to do with that is I'm going to personalize it. I'm going to put it in first person. I did it a little rough last week, so I'm going to try to do it in first person here.
Third person, actually.
Third, yeah, I'm sorry, third person, yeah.
I'm the grammarian here, okay?
You are. Right on, bro. Okay, here we go. So David, so this starts with here is the fellow. So David is the fellow who has been puzzling you, especially in my lack of control. David does absurd, incredible, tragic things while drinking. David is a real Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. David is seldom mildly intoxicated. David, while drinking, resembles let me see. David's disposition while drinking resembles my normal nature, but little. David may be one of the finest fellows in the world. That's the only true statement in that whole paragraph. And then it says, yet David takes a drink for a day and frequently becomes disgustingly and even dangerously antisocial. David has a positive genius for getting tight exactly at the wrong moment, particularly when some important decision must be made or an engagement kept. David is often perfectly sensible and well-balanced concerning everything except liquor. But in that respect, David is incredibly dishonest and selfish. David possesses special abilities, skills, and aptitudes, and has a promising career ahead of me. David uses his gift to build a bright outlook for his family and myself, and then pulls the structure down on our heads by a senseless series of sprees. David is the fellow who goes to bed so intoxicated, he ought to sleep the clock around. Yet early next morning, David searches madly for the bottle he misplaced the night before. If David can't afford it, if David can't afford it, he may have liquor concealed all over the house to be certain no one gets his entire supply away from him to throw down the waste pipe. As matters grow worse, this is the progression, David begins to use a combination of high-powered sedatives, which are drugs, and liquor to calm my nerves so that David can go to work. Then comes the day when he simply cannot make it, and David gets drunk all over again. Perhaps David goes to a doctor who gives me morphine or some sedative with which to taper off. Then David begins to appear at detoxes and sanitariums or at treatment centers. That's the end of that paragraph. I think David got kicked off. Let me see what this text says. Hold on one second, guys.
His power went out, so he'll be back as soon as he can.
Okay. Okay, so what I did there is I took that paragraph, I personalized it, put it in third person so that I can see, because a lot of times when I read the big book, I think for some reason they're talking about Eric or Bob or Sam or Esteban. They're not talking about me. I'm looking for excuses and gray areas to work in all the time. But man, when I personalize it and put it in third person like that, it makes me identify with that paragraph even more so than ever. And I hope I did it justice there, but take your name and put it in there and see how that works for you. So let's continue on here. We'll be in page 22 in the first full paragraph that starts with, "This is by no means a comprehensive picture."
Is it okay if I interrupt you real quick, David?
Of course. Oh, I'm sorry. Please.
No, it's okay. Since I wasn't here last week, I just wanted to share the definition of intoxicated. So, intoxicated is the condition of having physical or mental control markedly diminished by the effects of alcohol or drugs. So, he is the fellow who goes to bed. So, in a condition of having physical or mental control markedly diminished by the effects of alcohol or drugs, he ought to sleep the clock around. And then I also do have the definition for the form intoxication. So, intoxication is a temporary and reversible condition that affects the central nervous system after a person ingests certain substances such as alcohol or drugs. Intoxication affects judgment, the ability to think clearly, and behavior.
Thank you very much, Ashton. Yeah, and please just jump in. I wasn't watching the screen since I'm flying solo here for a second. So, did you have any definitions there, Sam, or should I just proceed? Okay, I'm going to proceed here then, guys. So we'll be on page 22, first full paragraph. "This is by no means a comprehensive picture of the true alcoholic, as our behavior patterns vary." So I'm not going to find out who I am as an alcoholic because of my circumstances or my behaviors. That's not what makes me an alcoholic. Those are the consequences and circumstances that are created by my drinking, all those things that I pointed out there in that paragraph. But that's not what makes me an alcoholic. What makes me an alcoholic is what the doctor talked about in the doctor's opinion, that once I put alcohol in my body, that I have this abnormal reaction to alcohol, that I want to have more and more and more. I get more thirsty. And then that this thought that overrides all my good thinking, without my consent, without my permission, I continue to still pick up a drink, even though I know the consequences and circumstances. If I can even recall them, makes me pick up that drink, and then I'm off to the races again. So let's go to stay on page 22 in the second paragraph. And the first thing is, here's a question. Why does he behave like this? This is the true alcoholic we're talking about here. This is the guy here that I just read over here on page 21 in the first paragraph, the real alcoholic. Why does he behave like this? If hundreds of experiences have shown him that one drink means another debacle with all his attendant sufferings and humiliation, why does he take one drink? Question mark. Why can't he stay on the water wagon? Another question. What has become of the common sense and willpower that he still sometimes displays with respect to other matters? So these are great. Does that? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Please jump in, Sam.
I have some definitions. I have the definition for debacle, which is described as collapse. So if hundreds of experiences has shown him that one drink means another collapse with all its attendant suffering and humiliation, why is it he takes that one drink? And then I also wanted, sorry, my cat right now is getting in the way. Why can't he stay on the water wagon? I wanted to describe that too. So staying on the water wagon is just described as complete abstinence from alcohol.
Thank you, Sam. Any medical stuff there, Ashton? Okay, thank you. So I'm going to answer these questions. Why does he behave like this? Well, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer prior to coming in Alcoholics Anonymous. And then it says, if hundreds of experiences have shown, and that's me, I'm the real alcoholic. I've had hundreds of these experiences. My story is not that I dropped a champagne glass by the pool and go, oh, gee whiz, I might have a drinking problem. I might go into AA. That's not how my story goes. I had 100 debacles, 100 catastrophes that happened in my life. And they show me that these are reasons why I shouldn't pick up another drink, yet I do. And it says, with all its attendant sufferings and humiliations, why does he take that one drink? So what we're trying to do here is we're transitioning from, and after the bottom of this page on 22, we're not going to talk about alcohol in our bodies any longer. We're not going to talk about the craving anymore. We're going to start talking about from page 23 to 43, we're going to talk about what happens to the mind. What is in the mind, the greater part of this illness? What happens here? And then it says, why can't he stay on the water wagon? What has become of the common sense and willpower that he still sometimes displays with respect to other matters? So these are not rhetorical questions. What they are, they're a follow-up to the three questions back on the prior page of 20 and 21. Moderate drinker, hard drinker, a real alcoholic. I'm a real alcoholic because once I take a drink, I can't stop. And once I stop, I cannot stay stopped. So let's go on to next paragraph. Perhaps there never will be a full answer to these questions. So all those questions are on that page in the second paragraph. I couldn't answer them because even Bill's telling us perhaps there never will be a full answer to these questions. Opinions vary considerably as to why the alcoholic reacts differently from normal people. We are not sure why. Once a certain point is reached, little can be done. We cannot answer that riddle. So I can't answer that riddle. Why did it happen to me? Well, it happens to 10% of society, right? 10% of the society picks up is a real alcoholic. But I can't answer why biologically I got it. I can tell you that my father was an alcoholic. I can tell you that my uncle died of a drug addiction, a drug overdose. My grandfather was an alcoholic. So it's in my genes to be an alcoholic. So if I would have never ever picked up a drink, I could have never broke out in craving, and I never would have had the obsession when it came to alcohol. But I did pick up a drink, become an obsession that overrode all my good thinking. And then once I took a drink, I could not control the amount I drink. So as Mark Houston says, I have no power, no choice, no control. And here's what I really, really need to know about that. As I still don't have, and almost coming up on 24 years of continuous sobriety, no power, no choice, no control. I will never have that, ever.
Hey, David.
So let's go to, I'm there. Yes, please.
David's back on, so you have to add him as a host so he can
Okay.
unmute himself.
Okay. Let me find him here. Sorry, guys. Technical difficulties here. Hold on. Participants. Oops. Let me find him here. Alphabetical order. Stay with me here. Oh, no, but it's Jedi David. Okay. Okay. You there, bro?
All right. Sorry,
All right.
power outage.
Okay. So what we did here is ran through the questions on page 22 in the second paragraph. Then Bill answered it by saying that in the third paragraph that can't really answer these questions. We cannot answer the riddle. And we're about ready to start the fourth paragraph there. If you want to go back over that since you jump on, please.
No, that's okay. We can just
Okay.
carry on. Okay, so we're at we know, correct?
Yes. Yes,
All
sir.
right, fantastic. Hopefully power stays on, team. We know that while the alcoholic keeps away from drink, he may do for months or years, he reacts much like other men. We are equally positive that once he takes any alcohol, whatever, into his system, something happens, both in the bodily and mental sense, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. The experience of any alcoholic will abundantly confirm this.
Okay. Do you want to go, bro? Since
No, go
I've
ahead.
been doing. Okay.
Go ahead.
All right.
I'm out of sorts. I'll jump back in.
So let's look at this paragraph for what it's for its value. This is, if you relapse just recently or relapsed in the past, this is what this looks like here to be able to relate to it. We know that while the alcohol keeps away from the drink, so abstinence, that's what the doctor even considers in the doctor's opinion, that abstinence. Well, the problem with abstinence for me is I have an abnormal reaction to that too, as he may do for months or years. So sometimes we'll be able to stay abstinent for that long. He reacts much like other men, go to work, eat dinner with the family, play catch with the kids. But then David is, and then we are equally positive that once he takes any alcohol, whatever in his system, something happens, both in the bodily, which is the craving, And the mental, which is the obsession, which makes it virtually impossible, no power, no choice, no control for him to stop. The experience of an alcoholic will abundantly confirm this. So this is us identifying, learn to concede to my innermost self that I'm a real alcoholic here, that once I take a drink, I will always break out in craving. No matter how long I'm on this earth, that I'll have this obsession that'll lead me back to the first drink. And by the way, as I pointed out just briefly a little bit ago, we're not going to talk about alcohol in our bodies anymore after page 22. We're going to start talking about the obsession in the mind now, page 23 to 43. We're going to the greater part of this illness.
Maybe, Sam, I don't know if you have like the 1938 dictionary definition of alcoholic. It might be worth us going back to that one more time, if you can. If not, no pressure. So, just sort of underscoring some of the things that David already said here. We know that while the alcoholic keeps away from drink as he may do for months or years, he reacts much like other men. So what is this big book of Alcoholics Anonymous telling us right here? It says that the alcoholic can sometimes keep away from alcohol for extended periods of time. That was my experience, certainly for long stretches of my alcoholism. This was not what my vision was, though, of what an alcoholic was. And I think I'm sure a lot of you shared that. We all thought before we came to terms, I'll speak for myself, that I was an alcoholic. What was an alcoholic? It was a bum, right? Living under a bridge, never took a sober breath, ever drank, night train out of a paper bag, right? That's what I thought an alcoholic was. I didn't realize alcoholics could have jobs and stay employed, right? I didn't realize alcoholics could have spouses and children and all these other things, right? We could be this Jekyll and Hyde person making our way through lives. I was going to say managing our way through lives. I'm not sure that's the right verb, but making our way through lives and still being an alcoholic. We are still learning at this point on page 22 what the big book's definition of an alcoholic is. So each time that noun is being used here, because we haven't fully defined it, what does alcoholic mean according to this book? We got into it in the doctor's opinion for sure. But we got many, many more pages where we're really getting to a fundamental understanding of what's an alcoholic according to this book. So when it goes on to say, the experience of any alcoholic will abundantly confirm this, what was said in this paragraph. So what's an alcoholic? The experience of any what, Sam, is going to confirm this?
I have the definition for alcoholism. It's not
Great.
Alcoholic.
Yep.
It's a disease condition caused by excessive use of alcoholic liquors.
So the experience of anyone excessively using alcohol is going to confirm these behaviors. What are the behaviors? I might be able to stop, but ultimately I'm always going to start again. That mental obsession is going to kick my butt. It's going to draw me back in. And then I'm going to have that first drink and I'm going to trigger the allergy. That craving is going to come back.
And I think that's the question I have to ask myself. Does my experience tell me that once I put alcohol in my body, that something happens? I need to know. I need to be convinced of this to be able to go forward. Because if I think that I can just stop on my own power, then just stop on your own power. Just don't take a drink ever again. You won't break out in craving. But if you just have the craving, then just go detox. And then just don't ever pick up a drink again. Yeah. And you won't break out in craving. But if you're both, as we'll get to on page 30 and find out that, on page 44, I'm sorry, I'll find out that I'm both, then I have no power, no choice, no control. I am convinced that once I put alcohol in my body, something happens. An abnormal reaction to alcohol happens to me. And so now we're going to take these pages 23 through 164 here. We're not going to talk about alcohol in our bodies any longer. We're going to be talking about the state that we're in right now. So 23 to 43, we're going to talk about the greater part of this illness, the obsession of the mind. But from 23 all the way to 164, the state that we're in right now. We're going to find out about that.
So this paragraph, again, just quick recap. Equally positive that once he takes any alcohol, whatever, into his system, something happens. So we can stop for a while. Obsession's going to kick in. Then when I take anything into my body, something happens bodily and mentally, making it impossible for me to stop. Therefore, the next paragraph says these observations. So what was just being described in that paragraph, right, about what happens to us, these observations, what happens to us, they'd be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than in his body. If you ask him why he started on that last bender, chances are he will offer you any one of 100 alibis. Sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility, but none of them really make sense in the light of the havoc an alcoholic's drinking bout creates. They sound like the philosophy of the man who, having a headache, beats himself on the head with a hammer so that he can't feel the ache. If you draw this fallacious reasoning to the attention of an alcoholic, he'll laugh it off or become irritated and refuse to talk.
I have some definitions here. The
Please.
first word is academic, which is described as theoretical rather than practical. So in the sentence, these observations would be theoretical rather than practical and pointless if our friend never took the first drink. And then the second one I have is havoc, which is wide and general destruction or ruin. So in the sentence, sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility, but none of them really make sense in the light of the havoc, wide and general destruction an alcoholic's drinking bout creates. And then I have fallacious, which is defined fallacious, which is defined as any reasoning that is faulty because it is illogical in method or based upon errors in fact. So if you draw this fallacious reasoning that is faulty because it's illogical in method, reasoning to the attention of the alcoholic, he will laugh it off or become irritated and refuse to talk.
Thank you. So, okay, so these observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink. This is the bomb that we're trying to drop and reinforce. And David was just, sort of previewing this. Not even previewing, because we're really sort of circling back on this. It's a concept that's already come up that Dr. Silkworth introduced to us. Bad stuff is going to happen once I start drinking. I'm going to break out in craving. I'm going to be off to the races. But if I didn't put any in me, I can't start things in motion. Now, I'm a real alcoholic, a real addict. Is my life still going to be a train wreck? Yes, absolutely, right? Because we all know how our lives were going even when we didn't have something in our bodies. But if I don't take the first drink, I can't break out in craving. And then a whole lot of that injurious circumstance, could be avoided. But it's saying the real problem is in my mind. Because even when I know I start drinking, I break out in craving, even if I don't understand what happened, I meant to have 2, add 22, I don't know why. And I have a real bad night, a real bad weekend, a real bad week. That next day, that next week, that next month, the thought's going to occur to me again to pick up a drink, and I cannot differentiate the true from the false. We haven't even really scratched the surface about alcoholic insanity. We're going to get into that more as we get into step 2, right? And I'm talking about alcoholic and addictive insanity that's referred to when we get to the second step, right? Because it's about the restoration sanity. The insanity that's present in my sickness and my illness is that I cannot differentiate the true from the false when it occurs to me to pick up a drink, not in my sick state. Right? So my real problem is that even though I know I'm killing myself, when someone says, let's go out for drinks, my brain says, good idea, I'll handle it, tonight will be different. Right? The main problem centers in my mind, not in my body. Guys, I haven't had a drink or a drug in going on 20 years. I still have the biology. I still have the physical craving. If I put alcohol in my body, it's a good chance I could break out in craving. I don't put it to the test. If I have to go in for a medical procedure or surgery, I want to know exactly what they're going to give me. I want to know how it's going to go. Are you going to knock me out before you give me anything? Because the last thing I want is I do not want to wake up feeling stoned. That is not a good state for this alcoholic and addict to be in. I don't want to take the chance of being conscious and breaking out and craving. Right? My sobriety and my recovery, too important to me. So it goes on to say, if you ask him why he started on that bender, how many times did people in our lives question us? Dude, why did you drink? You knew we had to be there on time. You knew you had to be at work the next day. And always had an alibi, always had a story, always had an excuse. I was not able to conjure up the concept that this was beyond my control. When I told you why I drank, why I told you why I relapsed, why I broke down, whatever it was, I believed it. Right? I didn't know that I was making on-the-fly excuses and lies. To me, it was all real. Right? Sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility. Yeah, my girlfriend cheated on me. Of course I was going to go out drinking, right? You would too. But was that really what happened? It sounds like the philosophy of the man who, having a headache, beats himself on the head with a hammer so he can't feel the ache. I mean, think about what this sounds like viscerally, right? I got a headache, so I'm just going to beat it with a hammer. So I don't have the headache anymore, but now I've got like a massive head wound. So if you draw this fallacious reasoning, this faulty reasoning to the attention of an alcoholic, he's going to laugh it off or become irritated and refuse to talk. No one was going to talk any sense into me or allow me to listen to their illustration of my alcoholic problem until I was ready to hear it. Bottom line. And then when I finally was ready to hear it, it had to come from someone who understood the real problem, right? Who could build that rapport with me and then could talk to me about the solution.
So yeah, so Bill is taking the path for us to experience 33 total pages about to confirm what? To confirm that, is this my experience that once I put alcohol in my body that something happens? And the answer for me is yes. But now let's go a little bit farther. As David's pointed out here, this would be academic and pointless if a friend never took the first drink. So I will never break out in craving and I don't pick up a drink. So a lot of times we come to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. The guy who's got 20 plus years came in this morning and says, oh my God, I've been craving alcohol all day. Or the guy with 3 days. No, you're not. You're not craving alcohol unless you're drinking. You can't, not according to the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. You're not craving alcohol. You're having obsession. So then it talks about here, therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in the mind rather than the body. So the problem is not the drink. We're still talking about the first half of the first step here. The question is, why am I powerless over alcohol before I take the first drink? See, I'm powerless when I have no control of the amount I drink once I drink. If I don't drink, I can't break out in craving, but I'm powerless before I take the first drink. I have no choice whether or not I pick up a drink. In untreated alcoholism, I'm going to pick up a drink, like David said. You know, and I'll tell you, most of the time I hear people talk about this in meetings. Oh, man, David pointed them out. My girlfriend cheated on me. I lost my job. You know, my car broke down, all these other. You know when I'm in the most jeopardy? When things are going really good for me. I got that promotion at work. I got more money in the bank than I've ever had before. You know, I stopped going to meetings because I'm so busy at work all the time. All these things. And Scott Redmond, who was a circus speaker years ago, you know, they talk about, you know, people talk about triggers, you know, coming out of treatment, triggers this, trigger that. You know, he used the analogy, the best trigger ever, consciousness. That's the best. It's not trigger. It's an obsession of the mind. Without my consent, without my permission, in untreated alcoholism, I am going to pick up a drink. I don't care how many 24 hours I have. I'm going to pick up a drink again on my own power, because if I think that I have some kind of a solution, some kind of control over whether or not I take a drink again, then I'm not powerless. I am powerless. I have conceded and learned in my innermost self that I'm a real alcoholic, meaning that I understand what happens to me when I take a drink, and I understand what happens before I take a drink. We're going to get to Jim's story. We're going to get to Fred's story. Not a cloud on the horizon. These are great examples of stuff. And then it talks about, therefore, it says, if we ask him why he started his last bender, the chances are he'll offer you any of 100 alibis. I got them all, guys. I got every one of them. And none of them are valid. I don't know why I'm taking a drink at this point of my of abstinence. I don't know why. Everything was going great. Everything was going shitty. I don't know why. I know why now. It's called untreated alcoholism. If I not draw closer to this power in my life, because now we're starting to address the fact and letting it slip in a little bit. We're talking about insanity, as David pointed out, not the clinical, psychological kind, insane thought that maybe I could have a drink. That's a lie. And I would have to drink on a lie today. I can't drink on the truth.
It's so important that we understand, and this is why we study this book. You know, we read and we study, and then we go out and do the work that we learn. But it's so important that we understand and ask ourselves, make sure, am I a real alcoholic? All right. And when I'm working with somebody new and they want my help, I got to figure out if he's a real alcoholic, a real addict. And listen, everybody's welcome into the fellowship. They meet the third tradition, right? They got a drinking problem and they want to do something about it. Don't look just at short form of the third step on the wall. Third tradition. Read the long form of the third tradition, you know, if you're in AA, and it's going to explain this very well. But my point here is that we don't need to drag people into AA or CA or whatever fellowship it is. Find out if they need to be here or not. We're not going to chase anybody out. But to David's point, if someone can take it or leave it alone, they don't fit the qualification, right, of a real alcoholic or real addict. And that's okay. God bless them, right? They don't need to do the work, right? Maybe they can be happy. Maybe their lives will turn around and they just stop drinking and drugging. It's okay. Everybody's welcome. But the program recovery, you know, principally, well, in your fellowship, in AA, I got a drinking problem and I want to do something about it. Therefore, I need help doing this work. Right? And it's going to vary a little bit, 12-step fellowship to 12-step fellowship. But some people don't even need a 12-step fellowship unless, as we do in our opening reading, you're just interested, you know, in a spiritual way of life, which is okay too. All right. So once in a while, he may tell the truth. Even David, right? Once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth, strange to say, is usually that he has no more idea why he took that first drink than you have. Some drinkers have excuses with which they are satisfied part of the time, but in their hearts, they really do not know why they do it. Once this malady has a real hold, they're a baffled lot. There's the obsession that somehow, someday, they will beat the game. But they often suspect they're down for the count.
I have the definition for malady, which is defined as any disease of the human body. And then another one is a moral or mental defect or disorder. And then the next definition is baffled, which is described as frustrated. So once this disease of the human body and or a moral or mental defect or disorder has a real hold, they are frustrated lot.
Ash, do you have a different definition of malady? No? Okay. Again, don't.
I'll look it up and see.
Yeah, you see if you got one. Go ahead, David.
So the book's going to answer with this question what a malady is anyways. This is the untreated part of my alcoholism, my unmanageability. You know, we're going to address it on pages 44 to 45. We're going to address it on page 52. We're going to address it on pages 60 through 62. And throughout the whole book, they're going to do. And they're going to answer the questions in chapters 4 through 11. I mean, what we are. So I'm not going to jump too far ahead because they're just addressing this right now. But it says that once in a while, the beginning of that paragraph, once in a while he may tell the truth. And the truth, strange to say, is usually that he has no more idea why he took that first drink than you have. Boy, isn't that true? I mean, I could come up with a million excuses, but I didn't know why I took that drink. You know, I had a perfect date and I set up with my wife and I just stopped at the bar right before I was going to come home that night and have just a drink with my buddies. That's all I was going to have. And I showed up 3 days later, coked to the gills and freaking without any money, and I'm still in the same clothes again. You know, it's like, and all my clothes are in the front yard and the locks are changed. and I can't get it in the garage, and now I got to sleep on the back stoop. And this is just this is the life of the only life this alcoholic knew. But it talks about, and this is something that I've done it in treatment. I mean, I've never really literally done this, but think about how insane this really is, why I picked up the first drink. So if I gave you all a piece of paper and I asked you guys, write down the 10 most insane things you've ever done. Probably say, well, I robbed the bank. You know, I stole from a golf course. I took some clubs. I stole from my wife's thin purse, slender purse. You know, I took my mom's snowblower. I hocked it, you know, right in the middle of a snowstorm. You know, I did all these things. You know what the most insane thing that this alcoholic could do? Pick up a drink. That's the most, but it's the most natural thing for me to do in untreated alcoholism. But it's the most insane thing that I could do because I have no power, I have no choice, and I have no control. I'm going to continue that pattern until I either die or get locked up. And then when I get locked up, I'm going to drink in the joint too. And then when I get out of treatment, I get out of jail, I'm going to pick up again because it's the only life that I know in untreated alcoholism. Until I can see them and learn to my innermost self that I'm a real alcoholic, this cycle, this chronic and progressive illness will not end for me until I die.
And this is another good paragraph filled with statements ripe for personalization and asking questions. Once in a while, do I tell the truth? And when I do tell the truth, do I have any more idea why I took the first drink than you have for me? Do I have excuses with which I'm satisfied part of the time about why I picked up? In my heart, do I know why I do it? Once the malady has a hold, am I a baffled lot? And do I have the obsession that somehow, someday I'm going to beat the game? Or do I suspect I'm down for the count? Right? A lot of heavy qualifications still in this part of the book. We're learning what it means to be a real alcoholic. I'm sick physically, mentally, and spiritually, according to this book. Again, very different than the dictionary definition Sam gave us, and very different than the medical definition today, especially that Ashton gives us. Okay.
I'm not going to do it today because it's going to set up when we get to the bedevilments on page 52. I've made out a list of things, and it's not correct, it's not right, it's not wrong, it's just different maybe than someone else's. But what is unmanageability? What does the spirituality look like? And the book describes it. And I picked out 15 different ways in this book, and it's not just a word; it's a sentence that Bill talks about. That looks. This is the soul sickness, this malady inside of me, this unmanageability, this untreated alcoholism, what it looks like, and how it shows up in my life, even in being a recovered alcoholic. You know, there's nothing wrong with going back to page 52 from time to time, and you know, if I'm not doing the 10-step inventory, if I'm not doing my 11th at night, you know, of course I'm going to start having problems with personal relationships. I'm going to be prey to misery and depression. But throughout the book, Bill's going to outline to us what the malady looks like. Again, they're going to give us a solution, which is outlined in chapters 4 through 11.
How true this is, few realize. In a vague way, their families and friends sense that these drinkers are abnormal. But everybody hopefully awaits the day when the sufferer will rouse himself from his lethargy and assert his power of will. Wow, that sounds inspiring.
I have some definitions here. Rouse, which is defined as to take action, and lethargy is a state of inaction. So, but everyone hopefully awaits the day when the sufferer will take action himself from his state of inaction and assert his will, his power of will.
Okay, so why can't you just drink like a gentleman? Why can't you just drink like a lady, right? Why can't you just do these other things? And everyone has this hope. But they also recognize that I'm an abnormal drinker. I remember when my daughter was born, her first year, my middle daughter, first year we had all the family over at noon for a barbecue, and it was noon. And I started drinking. I put the beer on ice at 8 o'clock that morning. I started at 8:01. You know, by noon I'm obliterated. I'm just drunk out of my mind. And my father-in-law said the guy worked so hard he deserves to have a few drinks. But after a period of time, though, man, I had sold their hope, and hope was a vision beyond their present circumstances. So they see no action from me to try to change anything, They're hoping I exert my will here and just man up like he has as a father in their family. But I suffer from a threefold illness, and I don't know it either. And I'm going to continue to drink, and I'm going to continue to harm people in untreated alcoholism. I don't have any power, no choice, no control. So I've stole my wife's hope, my in-laws' hope, all my children's hope. I think that's the worst sin that I could probably ever done to anyone. You know, all the other things that I did, you know, kind of go on the wayside compared to what I did when they had hope that someday that I would just show up not intoxicated and ruin the whole affair. And I couldn't do that on my own power.
So as I've said a number of times, you know, we're still really pounding our understanding of the problem. We're just getting some hints of what the solution is going to be. A couple of sessions ago, we read the line in the top page 20, our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depend upon the constant thought of others and how we may help meet their needs. That was a bomb that Bill sort of drops right in the middle of sort of a different topic, and then he walks away from it. We're obviously going to come back much later and spend a lot of time talking about service, especially by the time we get to chapter 7. But the point here is that, you know, there is no concept in our lives and in our families' lives that there is a solution beyond willpower, right? So we're just going to one day get up out of our filth and assert our power of will or our willpower. I say all the time, my approach to life was I was going to outthink or outmuscle any problem. Why would it be different with alcohol or other drugs? Right? Until I figured out I'd met my match. Right? But nobody conceives of a spiritual solution to overcome drinking and drugging or these other problems unless they happen to know someone who found this solution or they're one of us themselves. The tragic truth is that if a man be a real alcoholic, the happy day may not arrive. Right? The happy day where we're going to rouse ourselves. He has lost control. At a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into a state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is of absolutely no avail. This tragic situation has already arrived in practically every case long before it is suspected.
I have the definition of avail, which is defined as to have strength or force sufficient to accomplish the object in mind. So in the sentence, at a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into a state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is of absolutely no strength or force sufficient to accomplish the object in mind.
So in that paragraph, it says the tragic truth. So a catastrophe, whatever that may be, as tragic as can be, is that if the man is a real alcoholic. So we starting to understand what a real alcoholic is. That's someone that once they put alcohol in my body, I have no control of the amount I drink, and once they stop, I cannot stop. And Bill has introduced us to this malady. The second half of the first step, which says my life is unmanageable. That happy day may never arrive. Not in my own power. It's not going to arrive. I promise you, I tried almost everything. Sometimes I hear speakers say everything. I don't know. Maybe they did. I almost tried everything. He has lost, and this is something, again, control. I will never have control ever again. At a certain point in the drinking of every, underline the word every, I'm going to steal that from Howard and Kathy, you know, underline words in the book to have purpose and meaning, to emphasize what we're talking about there. At a certain point in the drinking care of every alcoholic, this doesn't skip every third one. He passes a state where the most powerful desire, that's powerlessness, to stop drinking, is of absolutely no avail. No human power can stop me from drinking. I gave you 100 different reasons why I should have stopped drinking before I did. This tragic, again, he's using the same word in the same paragraph, which Bill never does. Situation has already arrived in practically, again, here it is again, underline the word every case long before it's suspected. This happens for every alcoholic and every drug addict.
So this concept of the real alcoholic, you know, again, I'm just going to badger us to death about this. We are defining what this is. And as we keep saying, right, physically, mentally, spiritually ill. So real alcoholic. And it's, you'll meet people that introduce themselves as real alcoholic in meetings because they're trying to talk about alcoholic is defined in this book, right? A certain point into drinking of every one of these passes into a state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is absolutely no avail. All the alcoholics I know are all warriors. We're all smart. We're all shifty. We out muscle. We outthink. We out connive. We outmaneuver. We are good. The one thing that we couldn't out finagle, out muscle, outrun was alcohol. King alcohol. And this, tragically, this has already arrived in practically every case long before it's suspected. So what that means is by the time I become conscious of my problem, I'm beyond the ability to help myself, right? My obsession has matured. My allergic reaction has deepened. I'm not going to be at the point where I can just say, I think I better do something about this alcohol problem. And I stop drinking or I figure out how to moderate. It's too late for this guy. Oh boy, italics. So everybody strap in, squiggly writing. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We're unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink.
Okay, so squiggly writing, Joe and Charlie style. The fact, and it is a fact, as David emphasized there, is that most alcoholics, so Bill's being maybe a little liberal there, for reasons yet obscure, so obscure means not easily understood, have lost the power of choice in drink. Powerlessness. That's what I have written there. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. My willpower just does not show up. I can't on my own power not pick up that first one. We're talking about the obsession of the mind. We're unable at certain times. So I need to know periodic drinkers can still be alcoholics. If once they start, they break out in craving. Once they stop, they cannot stay stopped. So at certain times, so Bill's giving us being a little liberal here. At certain times, I was able to have a couple of drinks and then stop, and I was damn proud of me. Or I could pick up a 8-ball and I'm not going to lie to you and say I saved some of it for the weekend. I didn't do that.
Only at the beginning.
I never did that.
Oh, never. Okay.
Never did that. To bring in our consciousness, so into my own mind with sufficient force, the memory of the suffering, humiliation, or even a week or a month ago. Went to treatment in '93. Day one out of treatment, I picked up a drink and I went to the dope house without even thinking about why I went to treatment. I went to treatment to save my job and to save my marriage and to stay out of jail. And yet on day one out of treatment, I picked up again, and I'm wondering how the hell did that happen? I didn't even make it back here until '99. We are without defense against the first drink. We are out of defense. That's a fact. I have no mental defense against that first drink. So I am responsible for the work in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's no doubt about it. I need to have a sponsor. My sponsor needs to have a spiritual awakening. And my sponsor needs to have a sponsor, at least for me anyways. And he needs to have a spiritual awakening. But I have no power whether or not I pick up a drink. I cannot, when does suddenly show up in my life in Jim's story? I don't know what suddenly looks like, because when I first came into Alcoholics Anonymous, my first 90 days, you know, I was treading on thin ice the whole time. But I was doing the things I was directed to do in the rooms of AA and CA. Every day, I started doing the work out of the Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't just go to meetings. I went to meetings too. But the obsession was removed from me at 3 months sober, and I remember this clearly as can be. And I picked up the phone because I wanted to pick up that day. And I picked up the phone. The guy talked to me for 45 minutes on the phone in a snowstorm, coming home from a job site that I got cut off on because we couldn't work anymore. And I remember getting in my driveway with my wife and my little kids and their little baby shovels. We're outside shoveling, and the obsession was gone. I was blown away. I was blown away that this happened to me. And then all of a sudden, that sign on the wall that we see at meetings that says, "You're not alone anymore," started to come true for me. I wasn't alone anymore, that I needed to incorporate the power of the fellowship, the power of God into my life. And sometimes God just shows up with the fellowship. And that guy saved my life that day. I never pick up a drink, and I haven't had an obsession since that time. It's gone, been removed. And the 10 step promises, automatically, it happened for me. It happens for all of us. And I know today, without sufficient force, I've been on business trips all over North America. Without sufficient force, I wouldn't be able to remember what happened 24 years ago when I got handcuffed in my family room, got taken to jail, and was looking at 18 years in the state penitentiary for the stuff that I did. I won't remember that. I will remember what it was like when I was 14 years old and I took my first pull off a bottle of Mad Dog 2020. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not going to find out because I have permanent sobriety as long as I do this work here. I never have to take a drink ever again.
I mean, ask these questions, turn the statements into questions yet again. I mean, it's squiggly writing, so I feel like we ought to. Have I lost the power of choice in drink? Has my willpower become practically non-existent? Am I unable at certain times to bring into my consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago? But let me ask this question. So at certain times, I can't do that. So that by definition, based on the language Bill used, that means at certain times I can bring into my consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation. So sometimes I'm going to remember it. So then what? Do I then logically say to myself, well, I better not drink? No. It doesn't imply or suggest this, right? What this says is that I may or may not recall the bad stuff, the injurious things that went down when I drank. Still can't differentiate the true from the false. I'm still going to drink. You know? We're without defense against the first drink. No matter what, right? My boy Terry said in the chat, the don't drink no matter what club does not apply to me. It's more like no matter what, I'm going to drink, right? God is the only thing that's going to keep me clean and sober. What's our time? 3 minutes. I think it's a good point to stop right there, David. A couple minutes early. You all right with that? Okay.
Yes, sir. That's fine. Mm-hmm.